Hello and welcome to the Voice Break Podcast, episode 12. Today we have a repeat guest for the first time, Dr. Miki. Welcome back, Miki. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. How are you?
Doing fantastic, though, I have to say, honest. A little tired. Maybe you can see it in my face, but, we roll with the punches here. That's what we do. Yeah. Well, it's been a series of interesting months, is what it's been, since we last spoke.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us what's changed in life since you were last here.
Oh. Well, I've had some battles with self-care, and that caused a lot of physical problems like migraines, and I've more recently been prioritizing my self-care, and I think they're called daith piercings. Like they're in yeah, I guess I don't have to show you, but they're like in my ears, and they seem to really help with the migraines.
Mm-hmm.
And between that and more recently, I've been scheduling time for myself for like positive affirmations or just time for me. And it's like a consistent time each night. Because nighttime works better for me because my schedule's kind of wonky throughout the day. So that has been going on. I finally released my album From the Bottom Up, and pretty proud of that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, everything else that's happening is falling out of my head. But that's the long and short of it, I think.
Good. Well, those are really important parts of life right now.
Yeah.
The album is really exciting. And I took a listen to some of it, and I wasn't the only one, but I said, this feels like it's got to be on a game. It's got to be on a game soundtrack.
And I hear that a lot when I share my music to friends. They're like, you should submit to like video game companies, and I need to, like, I had found something and then I lost the site, and so I need to do more research on it to see like where, like, some indie games, like where to go for that sort of thing.
I have a couple ideas.
Oh yeah?
I have a couple ideas. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll share with you after. Actually, I'll share right now. Why not? The people need to know. So, well, first thing, between you and I know a lady on LinkedIn I met who actually does that already.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and she does, I think, 3D design modeling or something. So I can definitely get in touch with her. But I know there is an indie haven. It's called, what is it called? Oh no! There's this awesome site where I get like the best retro, like, either it's retro shooters sometimes or retro horror games that are just stellar. And I forget what it's called right now.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah. But when I remember it, I'm going to mention it.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a hub. There's a place. But regarding self-care, it's interesting you schedule your time during the night.
Yeah.
The reason that's interesting is because recently, I mean, I guess over the past few months, myself, regarding singing and our technique and what we do here at Voice Break, I started implementing practice for myself at night because I was having a hard time keeping like certain techniques because we were just getting so much new stuff all the time. and I found that helped me keep the ball rolling. Then I also do it in the morning, but it's the hours surrounding bedtime are like the most sacred for your brain, because your brain is a sponge in that state. So how has that helped since then?
I feel like it's eased some inner tension in me. I find that when I have anxiety, like it often feels like I was describing this to my therapist. It feels like a tree branching out or something, like it branches out in my chest. And during a session, and something that I've been incorporating during these like 7 p.m. when my alarm goes off is just like envisioning like taking in a deep breath and then almost like breathing life into the tree. Um,
Mm.
I'm still it's hard to find words for it, but I've been trying to like during that time I painted my anxiety and then I painted a visualization how of how it feels when I take those deep breaths. Um
Hmm.
so I mean, long story short, like I feel a little more centered. It's still kind of new though. Um so I imagine I'll continue feeling this way.
Good.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Good. I think so too. With consistency at that time, it progresses kind of naturally on its own.
Mhm.
In a sense, you're training your brain, your structure,
Mhm.
and over time you're rewriting your day-to-day thoughts.
Exactly, yeah.
Hmm.
Like it forces me to be more mindful of what those thoughts even are because it's like, okay, like it's 7 o'clock. What are you even thinking right now? And
Yeah, that is actually interesting to bring up because I recently read something about memory. One of the founding fathers of psychology, I think he was credited with major contributions to memory study, maybe neuropsychology. Actually, he wasn't as interesting as the guy that he studied for 30 years. So this guy, I don't know if I think he was French. I don't remember. But not the psychologist, this the guy that he was studying. He was a reporter. And he was discovered as a reporter because he didn't have a notepad or anything. And so I think some of the people that, like someone that was present, maybe it was a judge, they were like, why aren't you taking this seriously? He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, well, everyone's writing notes, you're not. He's like, well, I remember everything you said. And so they had him prove it, and he recited every single word. Every single word. And he also thought it was normal. Like, he didn't have a clue people didn't remember things like that. So this guy remembered every single experience he's ever had. But you'll see how this circles around, because what they found with that in studying him, first of all, he was synesthetic. Like, in one of the most complete documented cases ever, where it's not just like some people have synesthesia between sound and color, but this was synesthesia between all senses. It
oh
was
wow.
insane. And so they found two things. They found that, actually, they found maybe three or four things. first of all, memory. There's two kinds of memory. There's skill memory, which is like the experience you gain and you know how to do things, but is separate from experiential memory, where this happened to you. It felt this way. They also found that imagination is acutely tied to memory, where if you imagine something, it's almost like having experienced it. And in his case, it was having experienced it because his senses were so webbed together. He could imagine something and it would actually affect his body somatically. In
wow.
more than just like you imagine something, you get anxious, your heart rate increases. Like he imagined running after a train and his heart rate went up. Just running, in imagining. But then I don't know why he imagined having one hand over a hot stove and one in like an ice bath, and they both changed temperatures accordingly. So the psychosomatic connection is absolutely it's well documented how that is true, that you can, for instance, if your anxiety is a branch, you need to breathe life into it. There's a psychosomatic connection there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That is such an interesting case where like even the hands like change temperatures. That's so interesting.
It's baffling.
Yeah.
Like I want to experience that just once. Just want to feel like, what is that like? Because it was strange. He would see things. I don't know exactly how the experience was, like if it was physical seeing or like mind's eye. But he went to an ice cream truck once and wanted to see what flavors they had. And so he asked the lady, and she said fruit. For some reason, when she said that, he saw like black smoke coming out of her mouth. And he was like, no thanks. Like ruined his appetite. It's bonkers.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that you do that and you just let it be what it is. Like some people might hear that and be like, what is this, like woo woo garbage or whatever? But I mean, but you do it and you put it into your day and it helps.
Yeah. Especially like you were saying with consistency, it becomes something that you're used to doing, and it rewires your brain.
Yeah. 100%. And it really is that time around bedtime is sacred. I experienced that on the negative side once recently where I don't know, I think I went to bed angry. Honestly, I was just mad. And then the whole rest of the next day, I was angry. I was just like, I was a Sour Patch the whole time. And that's when I realized, like, yeah, we got to protect that time.
Yeah. I had a silly thought. I was just thinking about, like, sometimes before bed, I might have a song that's just kind of looping in my head, and then I wake up to that same song playing in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's something to that. Like, there's a connecting thread in my brain where it's like, you know, you're like, you go to bed angry, you wake up angry. Like, there's something to that.
Yeah. It's funny. I mean, there's a lot of cases where in pop culture people talk about that, but we think it's just like, you know what? It's just a thing people say. Like, dude, it's in a freaking Neo song. And I don't wanna go to bed mad at you. And I've heard that in like early life. People say like, you don't want to go to bed angry. I'm like, why? I don't understand why. Right? But it's that concept of like what happens in between in that time where oftentimes you're more susceptible. Like we generally tend to forget a lot of dreams, right? So who knows what you're going through? You could be in a mess and you don't even know it, but it's affecting your subconscious.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking like a counter argument about going to bed angry where not like pushing the situation though. Like say you're mad at your partner or something. Like maybe you need time to process it before having like a serious conversation about it. Or maybe it's too late to have a conversation like that right before bed, and maybe you still go to bed upset. So just taking that time to process like what it is that's making you angry and how to communicate it,
Yeah,
I think also matters.
that makes sense. In any situation, it's learning. You're learning something. Or I mean, the brain is it's amazing because it does most of the learning for you during that time.
Mm.
So, have you seen about there's a podcast on or there's an episode of the Huberman Lab podcast where they talk about learning and how most of it is done throughout sleep. I mean, it's either in deep rest or sleep, but that's when the brain like does that. Have you seen anything about that regarding emotion?
I know that the brain kind of replenishes, like it needs that time to rest and reset.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that would extend to emotions on some level. Like maybe going to bed angry and waking up angry, maybe you had an angry dream in the middle, or I don't know. But I
Yeah.
think it helps to process those emotions on some level.
I could see that. Yeah. I just had another thought and it's totally gone. But
It'll come back.
yeah, here's an interesting question. It sounds like in your artistic endeavors, which are many, you you kind of extract a feeling like that and you put it to paper. Do you ever put it to sound?
Yeah, I mean, I do with. I mean, I'm kind of watering myself down when I say this, but like I use samples to make my music, and so like I'm kind of using sound. I mean, I am using sound, but I'm not making the sound, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
But like the collection of sounds together is what
Mm-hmm.
I make.
Yeah.
And I've also sung in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Yeah. Okay. How do you feel like that correlates? I mean, seeing your own works on canvas or even photographed.
Hmm.
Do you feel there's a crossover, something that carries over with the vibe if you're doing like a same or similar emotion to music?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, I think I come up with maybe not the same vibe as what I'm painting or what I'm photographing, but I think people can pick up on similar vibes from one song to the other, like with like it's sounding like video game music for one.
Mm.
But I normally hear that, and then when on the songs I do sing on, which are rare because I'm not the best at writing lyrics, but like I'm told that, oh, your voice is very haunting, and I've learned that that's a compliment. And so like regardless of the song, like that's been like the feedback I've gotten on that.
Mm. That is an interesting compliment to get. I've gotten that before as well. And the voice is really a curious subject, especially here.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if you have this experience too, but personally, I like it best when I don't feel like it's my own voice. Do you feel what
How's
I'm
that?
talking about?
Like, how do you mean?
Like when I sing, when I record, if I feel like it's my voice, it does not resonate with me.
Oh yeah, I definitely relate to that.
Interesting.
Yeah, like it doesn't seem part of me sometimes, where it's like I did that.
Hmm.
Or other times where I'm told that this song is recorded, maybe not perfectly, but like, no, this is a good take. Like, let's go with it. Um, but in my head, I'm like, well, I can tell where I messed up, even though even though no one else can tell. Like, I'm like, okay, you can hear my breath here or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm able to like nitpick it.
Hmm. And when you find imperfections like that, do you identify like this is my voice? I feel like.
Um, Sometimes, yeah,
So,
because sometimes I'm like that. If it's surreal when it sounds good, and
yeah.
I'm, and then I don't know, it's kind of surreal at times.
Well, I totally agree. When it sounds good, it's somehow it loses, well, in a positive way. It loses the ego, and you hear it and you're just like, wow, that's cool. That's really great.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate goal for me. I never want to feel like this is my voice because, well, I actually don't know why, but I just don't. Like, I don't want to be like, wow, my voice is so good. I just want to listen to something cool.
Hmm.
That's it. How did that come about for you? I mean, how did you ever start recording ever?
I've always kind of wanted to.
Mhm.
My oldest brother Wade was in a band when I was growing up, and his room was right above mine, and
Mhm.
I'd hear them rehearsing and stuff, and like making the I I'll never tell him, but I'll never tell him, but I actually like read his lyrics. One time, like when he was gone, I was like, what kind of song? I shouldn't be reading this because I was like too young to be reading some of it, and he was probably too young to be writing it, honestly. But but I think that kind of sparked something in me, and there was this show that I grew up watching, Gem and the Holograms, and it's it it's before your time, but you might have heard of it. There was a movie that was going to come out a few years ago, and I think it got canceled because it was
Oh,
so bad.
that's fine.
Um, but like I want, but I would like sing to these little cassette tapes that came with like the dolls, and I think they did anyway. Like I don't remember where I got the cassettes, but I got them, and they'd have like this instrumental side where you could just go karaoke on them,
Whoa.
and my mom would document things when we were growing up where she had this giant camcorder, and I love how technology's advanced because then your shoulder isn't giving out while you're recording things. But uh
Uh,
but like she would record me singing, she'd record my brother with his band, and and then I was in music class growing up, and on top of that, I just always wanted to document things. Like I was kind of dorky, where I don't know if dorky is the word. I am dorky, and that's fine. I embrace that. But there was this. I had a little boombox that I could record. I could record like whatever I wanted, and I would take it to like friends' houses and press record. And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I want to preserve this conversation." And um and they're like, "That's weird." I'm like, "Yeah, but can you humor me?" And they're like, "Sure." And then we just and then I'd play these things back. Uh so I don't know, I've always wanted to document things just on any level.
mm,
And the first actually came out though with me trying out photography in college. Um yeah, like where I took pictures of every little thing. I think I mentioned last time, I might have maybe I didn't, but there was one time I really liked the way this trash can looked, and my mom was like, "You're spending too much on film. Here's a digital camera." Um, Again, technology is nice. So, uh, that's a long-winded answer, but I think I got all of it out. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's cool. I I feel a similarity between our experiences on that. Well, I didn't have a tape recorder. That would have been really cool. I remember one time I was staying with my great grandmother for a couple weeks. My great great aunt, who was her sister, she was there. She was really cool. We got along great. In fact, probably she was like the first extended family that I really bonded with in a genuine way. And for some reason, there was a camera. I think my dad had gotten my great grandmother a camera, a digital camera for something. And so it was just around. And I was bored. So I took it and just like made something with my imagination. Like I was pretending this is an ant perspective, POV, and I was just like recording, going up a chair kind of thing. And there's a there's there's a unique experience or satisfaction you get when you record something. I can't put a finger on it, but it's interesting. I mean, okay, actually, we did record things on my mom's flip phone in like 2003.
Be like 10 seconds.
Yeah. And we would take the voice memo. As soon as I found out about that, I was recording things. Take the voice memo, and we just make up. We would just on the spot, my brother and I, just something. I remember one time we were in the parking lot at the state fair here, or maybe it's the Blueberry Festival. Anyway, we were parked in. There was a tree in view just up ahead. It looked like, for some reason, looked like the savannah in Africa. It reminded me of that. And I pressed record, or maybe my brother had it, and we did this thing. It was like he was doing a reporter voice or a journalist voice, and he's like, and here we have 1,000,000,000,000 donkeys frolicking in the shadow. And then we went crazy. We ended up sounding like donkeys, and my mom got mad. But for some reason, that was the funnest thing, to just record something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of us can relate. And then when you get your hands on stuff that's more musical, I mean, more designed musically, how do you feel that satisfaction transfers?
I mean, I think it, when you create something, whether it's, music or, like a painting or any form of art, really, like it feels kind of, I don't want to say productive. I mean, it is, but I feel like it's a different word than what I mean to say. But you have like evidence that you have done something. Something that matters to you. Yeah.
Yeah, proof of concept, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of that, especially helping you see that this is possible.
Mm-hmm. It's like, not only is it possible, but it's here,
It's here.
like you did it.
Yeah. That is a good feeling. Tell us about your production process. How do you go about structuring things?
Well, it kind of depends on which app I'm using. Like if I'm using Launchpad, it's much easier because it comes in sound packs where there are multiple samples in one go. And you can just press little buttons on the screen and you can press record and boop a doop a doop, and they're all looping whenever you want them to, and you don't have to like search for them anywhere. So with that one, it's more like, okay, which sound pack do I want to use? And is it one that I already have? Do I have to buy one? I try them out, and sometimes it takes me a while to find the right one. If I'm using BandLab, it's a little more complicated, where like I pick the sample and then it goes on a track, and then I pick another sample, it goes on another track, and you have to like make sure that they're in the right spaces. And I mean, it's not hard, it's just a little more effort. And it takes a little longer because of it. which is fine. But sometimes I just want to quickly put something together because I have squirrel brain. And other times I'm hyper focusing and I want to use BandLab where I'm meticulously piecing things together. So that's pretty much my process. And regardless, I end up regardless as to whether or not I use Launchpad or not whether I use Launchpad or BandLab, I eventually put, like, if I use Launchpad, I actually import it into BandLab so that I can work on certain effects, give it some reverb, maybe adjust the volume a little bit if I think it's too loud and blowing out your ears, because nobody wants that. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know you could do that with BandLab.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the interface is with BandLab? It sounds like you sometimes have to do a little more fidgeting, but how do you like it?
I like it pretty well. It seems easy to pick up.
Okay.
Like, there's some programs that I want to learn to do, but they just seem so like there's FL Studio. Like, I want to learn that, but it just looks so beyond me. And like, maybe I need to see if there's like a free version where I can just like kind of get the feel for it, because I don't want to spend that kind of money and then not know how to work it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know some people watching have some ways, but I won't say anything beyond that.
Okay. I'll look at the comments later.
But yeah, I don't know if FL Studio has a free version. They have an app. It's got terrible ratings. That's pretty crazy to see, because FL Studio itself looks gorgeous, and especially the plugins. Stock plugins are insane with FL Studio. I agree. It looks like a lot, especially that and Pro Tools. Pro Tools supposedly works like almost none other. Like it's something that people get very rudimented training on. I first started with Reaper, and so that's why I was asking about BandLab, because that's kind of like what it's like for me. Just I have no tactile foundation with BandLab. I get into it and I can make a couple tracks, but after that I'm like, I don't have object permanence.
Oh yeah.
When I don't see all my options here, I tend not to even bother looking for it. I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go use Ableton now. So, have you played with something like that? Maybe there's Reaper. There's Ableton has a free version as well.
Okay, I'll look into that one because I've heard good things about Ableton.
Yeah, Ableton is. Plus, you can get kind of a, well, there's different tiers, and you can get on payment plans, which is nice.
Ooh.
I have Intro right now, which is limited, but it's actually been helpful for me, so as not to be overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of which, how do you deal with overwhelm in a project?
I take a break from it because it's kind of like when you're playing a video game, and you've got like the boss battle, and then you lose in the boss battle, and then you make silly mistakes, and you're frustrated, and you want to throw the controller. And it's like, I don't want to get like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I take a step back for a little bit and then come back to it.
Interesting.
I also don't want to hate what I'm doing.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. I got to that point recently. I was making a track and I was like, I'm so inspired. I finally figured out like my element. It was great. I'm putting things together. I'm like, wow, 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 wow. This is awesome. And then at one point I was like, that's not working the way I wanted to. Now I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was about to say, screw the whole track. Let's start a new one. Whatever. And then I said, no, hold on. What if we just look at here? Because I just got like a few thousand samples. I already was using a few of those, but I was like, maybe they got something else in here. Just found any old thing. I remember what it was. I think. Oh, found some thunder samples, like just thunder sounds. As I was looking for like some kind of instrument for a lead, and I put down a MIDI track. I don't know how this happened, but I ended up doing chords with it, and I was like, "Whoa, that doesn't sound. That actually sounds like real thunder. That's crazy." And then I found something else. I dragged it on. I was like, "Oh my god, it just happened." I don't remember where I was going with that.
But I think I don't know, like those moments where like, you created a thing, like it's like that
Yeah,
that word that I can't find now. But yeah.
yeah. You get that satisfaction. It's like, oh,
There we go.
it does work. And I think the thing about frustration is maybe when you pivot instead of giving up, that's when that becomes your strength. So you go somewhere else or you do something else, or you try something else. Frustration comes when it's like, we don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Then you have a tendency to maybe give up. But if you say, hold on, let's try something,
Mm-hmm.
that tends to be where you have success, in my experience. Oh, also Itch.io. Itch.io is the indie game
How do you spell
haven.
that?
Itch.io. Like,
Oh,
yeah, love that place. And
cool.
I think there's community there too. Like, there's just a ton of stuff. But okay, what if we can bring up a new subject within our time? Imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
I mean, I think it's how does it happen? I mean, I think it's something that we all experience on some level. I know in the therapy field, like a lot of therapists feel it, but I know it's not limited to there. Like people like live like moms will feel like they're not doing their best, or that their best isn't enough. Um, I think we all have that feeling at some point.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Ooh. So it's when your your abilities don't line up with the standard of what that role needs to be.
Yeah. But I think it's like internalized standards.
Yeah, it's totally perceived. That's really interesting because lately, in a broad sense, I've had a bit of calm around it. For a long time, I felt that way in almost everything.
Mhm.
And what actually changed things for me was being honest with myself. Where I said, I'm not a singer because a singer is someone who does all this stuff. And yes, that's my internalized perception, but I don't identify with that. And just having that separation, it's good because you as an individual, you you contribute different to what is expected of you, and your skill set and perspective is something only you have.
Right.
So if I were to say I am a singer, then I would have to feel imposter syndrome in some regard
Mhm.
because my perspective isn't boxed into that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Like your perspective isn't the perspective of it, and you're able to challenge that. Like I used to be a runner, and
Mhm.
for a long time, not a long time, but when I first started, I didn't call myself a runner, and I joined a running club to be a runner. And I asked like the head of the club, like, at what point am I a runner? He's like, whenever you call yourself one. I was like, what's the difference between running and jogging? Nothing. Like you can run at different paces, and so like just challenging that concept because I'm thinking like, okay, to be a runner, I have to do it like 5 days a week, and I have to do all these races and blah blah blah. But it's like you
Mhm.
just have to run, and I feel like that translates to a lot of things.
I think it translates ev- definitely. So it sounds like it's like when you identify or when you feel like you have to be something.
Hmm.
Do you think you inevitably get imposter syndrome from that?
At times, yeah, I think that it comes up in definitely me personally, where if I have this expectation of this is how things are supposed to go, I might have some doubt as to whether or not I can do that. And then like, having to challenge those thoughts and or challenge the expectation, like do I need to do that?
Hmm. I I'm with you on that. Hmm. Ooh. So the idea of imposter implies that you're not telling the truth, right?
Yeah.
So how do you know?
Like, how do you know what?
How do you know if you're telling the truth?
Uh, well, I mean, I guess it comes down to like trusting yourself that you do know these things, that you are capable.
Hmm. Yeah. And if you don't know, then
That's fine too.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, the interesting thing about that is that the expectation or the standard tends to creep up. I mean, it tends to become more and more ambitious or ridiculous to a fault at some point. Because early on, you're like, I have to be a singer, I have to do this, this, and this. I have to be a runner, I have to do such and such. But then when you get to such experience, suddenly a runner or a singer is so much more, and you're so much less still.
So in challenging that expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. I think kind of like what you're saying is just because you're a singer or a runner or whatever, doesn't mean you have to know everything about it
Right.
and do everything that everyone's ever said is what a singer or runner does.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Thank you, Miki.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. This was a treat. I did not know what happened to the time. I was like, I mean, it's got to been like 40 minutes by now.
Right. Yeah,
Wow.
that kind of zoomed by.
Yeah, it really did. That was weird, but that's okay. We had a good time.
Yeah.
Learned about cassette tapes, recording, all that sort of thing.
It was a nice time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, hey, I have some ideas for you, game music wise.
Okay.
And in any case, your new album,
From the Bottom Up by Pax Minerva.
From the Bottom Up by Pax Minerva, it'll be in the description. Go take a listen. And any game devs out there, you got to see what we're talking about. As always, thank you for watching. This is Tristan, Dr. Miki, the Voice Break Podcast. We out.